Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Lion, the Way, and the War, where we discuss Jesus, his church, and the spiritual battle that surrounds us all. My name is Craig Allison, and I'll be your host. All right, hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to another episode, and joining me on today's podcast is Cory Mattox, who is a sophomore at the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga, and he is studying civil engineering. And Cory, you enjoy running and reading, playing the guitar, and watching mixed martial arts. As hobbies, right?
Oh, yeah.
You grew up in the church. It was interesting because you said you got serious about your faith once you got to college and joined the Christian Student Center and then became a student ambassador. And so I'm going to talk just a little bit about that. But Cory, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, good that you joined us today. And so like right off the bat here, your faith, maybe not taking it as seriously as you do now. Once you got to college, normally it's the reverse. Kids get to college and then their faith isn't part of their mindset. So what happened?
Well, I definitely couldn't be here without the friends that I had because the guy you interviewed 2 times before, Jacob, right?
Yep.
He's the other student ambassador. We were best friends in high school. He was best friends with Christian. So we both got into the CSC as friends who both knew Christian. And he had been going a year before me because he's a year older.
Okay.
And I kind of just joined along with him. And I noticed in college, I was like, that's really the pivotal change where you can go down 2 roads. I remember...
you recognized that before you got to college? You were thinking as a high school senior? Or
I recognized it actually during my orientation. For my UTC orientation, it lasted overnight. So, and during the night, everyone went into the auditorium that they have in the UC, and we did the chants for UTC, getting welcomed in as mocks. Mm-hmm. And I remember there was a woman who came and sit by me when we were doing all the chants and stuff. And you can tell just by the way she was dressed and the way she was talking, and she was trying to talk with me and all this, that I was like, now is the opportunity where it's if I can go down a rabbit hole here, and if I'm not able to kind of understand and find my own way and find my own strength in Christ and in Christianity, then I felt like I would really, really taken a large fall, which was something different from high school, because in high school, I could kind of piggyback off my parents' faith, and I could kind of just go to church with them and not do anything bad and kind of just be lukewarm, really. It was easy to do that.
Yeah.
I was now in college, I can't really do that. And I also did want to I wanted to live with a little bit more of a purpose too, I didn't want to just relax by life, I guess, Yeah. And so really the conversations then at the CSC, after I was drawn in through, Jacob and Christian, led me to just wanting to find more, to questioning more, really just wanting to read my Bible more, right? And but I don't really think I got serious about that until I thought about becoming an SA, because the first time I thought about becoming an SA was over right before winter break. Ty was having a conversation with me and Jacob about it, and I was like, well, all my friends are going to do it, so now I need to figure out if I really want to do it. Mm-hmm. And so I was the last friend of that group to join on and be yeah, I want to become an SA, because I wanted to really make sure that I want to do it. And at the end of the day, I felt like it was that final commitment where it was reassuring that I had to find faith. I had to do the research. I had to, understand all these things because I'm going to have a small group that depends on me.
Right.
I'm going to have new freshmen coming in who depend on me to, tell that to them and to relate to them. And so now, it's just been a huge honor to just talk to the new freshmen that we've had about like different things that I can now that I've, read more and researched more and had more conversation with Harrison and everybody.
Yeah.
It's been a big blessing.
So for those that maybe have not listened to some of the past podcasts, or this is the first one you're listening to or watching on our YouTube channel, SA, you keep saying SA. So that's student ambassador. It's the student leadership team, which I'm working through, doing a podcast with all the current student ambassadors at the Christian Student Center. So you guys help Harrison Gibbs, who is the campus minister there, really be an outreach there on the campus of the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga and offer an alternative to some of the groups and the things that are going on at a secular university. So for those that didn't know what SA means, it stands for Student Ambassador. It's part of the leadership team at the Christian Student Center. Is that a mustache on the top of your hat?
This is a mustache.
That's really throwing me. I'm trying to look at you, but I keep seeing the mustache.
It's so fun.
Does that mean anything?
So it comes from from hockey, the Nashville Predators. They have a player on their team who's like, he's the best forward, the best like offensive hockey player that they have. His name's Philip Forsberg. Okay. And he has a mustache that is like this. And so they made this mustache for him to kind of be like a little inside joke.
Gotcha. My oldest son is a huge Predators fan, so he's going to be mad that I didn't know what that was about.
No, you'll hear from him, but
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
Okay, so speaking of student ambassadors, I have it on good authority that there's one student ambassador there that you're particularly fond of. Like there's a student ambassador that I think is your favorite of all the others. Yes, of all your other favorites.
Maybe. Who would that be?
Well, I mean, I've heard that you happen to have a special kind of relationship with a girl, which is cool because, like last year when you were kind of hanging out at the CSC, the Christian Student Center, you really wanted a girlfriend.
I don't think it was on my mind that much.
No, it was. It was definitely on your mind.
It was on my mind so much.
You wrote a poem.
Oh, that is true. Yeah.
Open mic night. I remember that. At open mic night, you literally wrote a poem about being a lonely single guy, basically. And would any girl please date you?
That's not any girl. That's not true. I specifically said I wanted an engineering girlfriend that I could build concrete canoes out of, because that's something like I'm in civil engineering, and so the civil engineering program has a ASCE, which stands for American Society of Civil Engineers, and so they get together with a bunch of colleges and they'll have competitions, and one of the competitions is they build a canoe out of concrete and they race it, and so there's a lot of different things that go into that, and so I was like, I'm gonna find a girlfriend in one of my engineering classes, and I'm gonna build a concrete canoe with her.
But you didn't find a concrete canoe building.
I would say I found better, but no, like it's funny because that really came from just kind of being bored with some of my college classes. Like the first time I started playing around, I remember I was in like a history class, and you had to write like introduction discussion. And so I just started making up a story about how, like, I couldn't get along with, like, my cat. And so I tried to find ways to make papers like that funny. And so going into UTC, we took a first-year experience class, which is just, like, the most useless class you'll ever take. Yep. And so in order to try and make that funny, I tried to include getting a girlfriend as much as possible in my papers and in my discussions until my professor mentioned it.
Well, clearly it made an impact on me, because that's pretty much, what I knew of Cory Mattox was a guy looking for a girlfriend.
Yeah. Well, that was what I put up on open mic night. I read my paper.
So maybe this particular person heard. I can't remember if she was there or not for that particular. I think she was there.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Can I say her name?
Love at first sight.
Is it? Is it?
I
Am I allowed?
don't care. Yeah.
Okay. So you date a girl named Tahlia.
Correct.
And she is also a student ambassador. So she works there. Is that hard to juggle being a boyfriend, but also being a student ambassador, dating another student ambassador who, because I kind of have an idea of like how busy you guys are as student ambassadors.
It's harder to get my schoolwork done than it is to be a student ambassador. Like, we both have a pretty good idea of like, okay, this time is a time that we're supposed to be meeting with other students. And like, we both really enjoy like meeting new people and trying to bring them into the CSC. So like, it's not really an issue when it comes to like student ambassador stuff, but when it comes to like the weekends or not many people are there and like I should just be doing my schoolwork, I'm like, I'll just hang out with Tahlia, and it can get in the way of that. And then I just have to pull a few,
So you like her?
Late nights. A little bit.
Do you understand, do you know the statistics of student ambassadors that date one another? Do you know the statistic there? Has anybody shared that with you?
No one has shared that with me, no.
So you're not the first student ambassador who dated another student ambassador at the Christian Student Center.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we had one of those last year.
Yeah.
So, we're keeping the trend along.
We did. As a matter of fact, when I was the campus minister for that decade or so, we had quite a few that dated. And you want to know how it ends?
In absolute turmoil and hatred.
No, Cory, it does not. It well over 90% of the time, it ends down at the end of an aisleway exchanging rings.
Oh, that's so cute.
Okay. Just so you know, I felt like I needed to bring that up. All right, let's get serious here. So I'm asking all of the student leadership team, as I'm having them on the podcast, I'm asking them this same question. What do you think is the biggest challenge for you and other college students in regards to their faith while at college?
I would say the biggest challenge, usually it relates to just like having like a good friend group that does that, you can kind of get pulled astray. Like the biggest spirit, like I can't so much relate to that as I can talk to other people about it, because like Harrison used the analogy with the CSC, it's like a harbor. It's like the harbor for Christian college students who are looking to strengthen, revitalize, or find faith. And so like I'm there all the time. If I'm not in class, I'm at the CSC. So like for me, it's not as hard of a challenge, but I go out and I talk to other people and it's like, oh, my roommate is in a frat and he's out partying every night and he'll come back and he'll be drunk or he'll be doing whatever. Or it's like, yeah, my roommates did party and I kind of want to get out of that. Like I know it's wrong, but I have all these friends that do it. And so now I'm trying to look for basically a new group of friends to try and like, maybe start the turn to come back into the faith. And so it's like the biggest issue is just with connections to other people, letting that go astray.
I mean, do you think it's just like it's just all random and left to chance, like who you end up with? I mean, kids thrown together, you don't know who your roommates are going to be, like tossing the dice. And then, I mean, if you end up in a dorm with a bunch of people that like to party, you're pretty much going to be walking away from any kind of Christianity if that was your background, and you're just going to be partying for the 4 years of college or being part of that whole, that whole scene.
No, you have to be aware of it to a certain extent. Like the big thing with like spirituality is like people just honestly in college, they just don't care about themselves. Like they don't care about their future. They don't care where they're going. They kind of just walk around and do whatever's fun, whatever makes them happy. And so like it's about being aware of like, I need to use this time in order to like not have a terrible late 20s and early 30s where I'm just kind of like picking up pieces of like, you know, who I used to be before I was partying, or just like, you know, it's not necessarily like the outcome of like your friend group is how you're going to be. You know, it's like you judge people, or well, you can tell people who they are by their fruit, right? And so like fruit, it either indicates like the quality of the tree or the quality that is to come, right? So like you can be a good Christian person, make a mistake, and you can return to Christ from that, and, you know, not let that define you, and kind of reflect on that. Or you can let that completely blow up your faith, and, you know, you start deconstructing and all that.
Right.
And so it's about not letting the little things affect you. And it's about trying to find opportunities to connect with people who will help you. You know?
So the last time I checked, and I don't know, I'm going to assume the number's pretty similar to what it's been, about between 5 and 8%, and 8% is, you know, really the top end of students at UTC are involved in a campus ministry. So we can say, you know, between 5 and 8% of college students are at least on the surface interested in their spiritual development, their faith walk, staying plugged into their Christianity, that type of thing, which clearly indicates that the vast majority of students don't or are not. And so you started the podcast by saying, you know, that on orientation night, you had this moment of like, let's just say self-awareness, where you get intentional about, you know, I need to make some changes in my life. It doesn't seem to be the majority of college freshmen have that type of intentionality. It's more like they're in a river, and wherever the stream takes them is where they're going to end up. Is that accurate, or am I off base there?
Yeah, like I think, like I said, people just don't care. Like they kind of see the trajectory of how things are going with like the nation and with politics, and like what people do affects like how they can think. And so like what do people do? They kind of just sit around, don't do anything, don't socialize, they're on their phone. They're like developing like a bomb in their brain, basically, where it's like, you know, everybody's eyes are just glazed over. You know, they don't have any sort of like, let me think of how this affects me. There's none of that. It's just like, I want to do that. I guess I'll do that.
Okay. So do you think that that's the biggest risk then for college students in faith is that lack of caring, just, you know, whatever happens, and then the next thing they know, they're in a friend group where they've been influenced in a way that maybe they hadn't even been prepared to be influenced that way.
Yeah. I think that is one of the biggest things, just not being proactive.
Okay.
They're being completely reactive to their environment. And like, I think nowadays, if you're reactive to your environment, you're just setting yourself up for failure. Like, I mean, you could think of this spiritually. You could think of this from like a nation standpoint, like just like politically how we are as a nation. Yeah. Like just everything is kind of just turning upside down and crazy and awful. And everyone basically has turned away from Christ, you know? Like, because it's not just a modern phenomena. Like it really started in like the 60s, right? With all those revolutions and all the exploitations of all the different drugs and everything. And so it's like, if you don't live a life where you're checking yourself and where you understand like, hey, this has a big impact on what I will do. Like when you're in your late teens, early 20s, like that is where you make changes that have the biggest impact on the rest of your life.
I can't,
People aren't aware of that.
I'm listening to you. I'm hearing what you're saying. I agree with it. 100%. I agree with everything you're saying. But I'm imagining like other people your age listening to what you're saying, just kind of shaking their head thinking, man, you're a doofus. Like, I mean, you sound like an old man.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you get it, right? So how does that translate? Like, I mean, because you're watching your friends, a lot of them fall away in this world right now. So, I mean, what do you do with that?
Well, it's hard to connect to people who don't want to be connected to, is one thing. And so, I think it takes understanding people, because people inherently don't just want to like live a futile life. If you ask people what they want to do, it's like, oh, well, maybe they don't necessarily want to live a life that reflects the life of Jesus or to have anything to do with Christianity. But they'll at least want to be good in their eyes. Mm-hmm. And so it's about finding ways to connect with them of like, well, you want to be good, or you want to do more with your life than just, sit around, do nothing, or just party, which is probably a majority of people until they get into the whole social can of like, partying. And it's about connecting that to Christianity and to, the cornerstone, which is in Christ.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I'm struggling to vocalize, put these thoughts together is, how do we connect with your age group, with college students? Because that's where we're losing the vast majority of them, which is a contributing factor to the moral decay of our society, when they go down that road and get pulled into that. And so it's this issue that we're faced with, and this sounds bad, but it's almost like, is the church, is the student center, are we properly selling our religion? Because, from a marketing standpoint, it's like, do people really understand that to be a religious person, to be a Jesus-loving person, to want to live a life that is in step with Christ, is actually a really good benefit. It's going to do good things for you down the road. It's not a bad thing. It's not going to cause you, to be a horrible, awful person, and to be just miserable. And I know that sounds kind of contradictory because, I mean, in today's world, in today's culture, I know a lot of people who are Christians and it's sacrifice. They do get mistreated. But there's joy in that, so, and that's a hard thing to package and sell to people, especially your age. So I'm wondering, from your perspective as a college student, if it's hard to sell that to adults, how in the world are you going to sell that to people your own age and get them to buy into it?
Well,
I know that's a really hard question, right?
Yeah, because you can't make people sell what they don't want to buy,
right.
Or you can't make people buy, you can't sell what people don't want to buy. And so, like, the issue that I think most young people have with religion is, like, they grew up and they saw their own church community as hypocrites, or now they believe they're not, like, loving enough, right? Because they've changed this definition of love to mean just accepting whatever. Yeah. And so it's about people not being able to process and think through, like, I have my own feelings about this, but what is actually true? And so, like, there is a huge disconnect there. And so I think the disconnect is to try to figure out where that disconnect lies, because it's really in, like, how they view it and their emotionality in viewing it and how it actually is.
Are college students willing to have those conversations and listen, or are their minds made up?
Well, the majority of people I've talked to about it go to the CSC or like visiting the CSC. So I would say that, like, I probably have probably not the best person to sample, because the people I'm going to talk to who are going to the CSC are probably already more prone to, like, thinking a little bit or being more open. Yeah. But I would say that most people, they just don't really care. Okay. And so, like, how do you make them care? You have to relate to them. You have to figure out, you know, if you don't care about Christianity, you don't care about your own life, honestly, bottom line. So why don't you care about your own life? And you have to start there,
right.
I think.
You mentioned, you know, part of it may be churches being, you know, hypocritical. They look back and they see what do churches today need to be doing for college students that can rebrand us. And I'm using these marketing terms for a reason, because I think a lot of people can understand that. And I don't mean it bad. Like, I don't want to put a taint on the church saying, you know, we're branding and marketing and that kind of stuff. There is a, you know, a piece of this that requires us to think about how we are viewed, you know, the kind of stuff that we've done to make your demographic look at the church in a negative light and be like, you know, you guys are, it is hypocritical or whatever. So the question is, what do churches need to be doing in order to give your demographic to reinterest them, to say, you know what, maybe I need to take a second look at church and give it another shot?
Well, I don't think it's as much of a marketing thing as like a home thing. It's like people's homes are just not good at bringing up. You know, like the younger generation honestly has a little bit of disdain for like the older generation, I think, even if they don't recognize it. And like you could say that they're just being like greedy, I guess, in doing that. But it's like, look at like how the nation was when, like, say, Gen X was born, you know, the 70s, I think. And look at the country now. It's way worse. Everything is worse. And so I think young people view Christianity as like, we tried that. Look at, like, everybody's grandma is a believer. Well, look what that's brought us now. It's just everything sucks now, you know, honestly. And so I think there is like a little antipathy there, or, you know, disdain there, where it's just like they're annoyed at the older generation for kind of
messing
up the country.
Yeah.
And so I think like where the hypocrisy comes is either saying, I think where it naturally stems is just from Christianity. They think it's all about love and they don't understand what love is. One. Or two, they see, you know, the older generation kind of talking to them about like, oh, you need to be in the Bible, you need to be in the church, and it's like, maybe their grandparents were in the church. Maybe they were good Christian people, but that whole generation as a whole, and that's how they're judging the generation as a whole.
Yeah.
Got way worse and strayed from God heavily. And so I think there's two aspects there where they view that as hypocritical.
Would you be inclined to say that my generation and older lacked the authenticity that your generation so desperately wants?
I think so. Yeah. And I like, not necessarily like we're blaming you. Like there were, like the older generation kind of just didn't know the ways the country was getting messed up. They didn't know how to stand to fix it. And so now it's like the younger generation just kind of has to live in it, and they just kind of have to put up with it, and they got to figure everything out for themselves, kind of. And so like, I say that because like younger people honestly kind of are entitled. And I don't agree with that at all. Like you shouldn't be entitled, but I understand it. Because, like, you know.
Sorry. I thought I had that silenced.
No, you're good. And so I understand that entitlement, like, a little bit because, like, yeah, and I understand the country kind of sucks now. Like, we can't, like, buy a home for, like, $40,000 and then, you know, sell it for, like, $400,000.
Yeah.
That's non-existent.
Yeah.
So anyways, do you want me to go on about like
no? I'm
younger,
just I'm,
like, how to appeal?
No, I'm kind of processing what you're saying, because I think that there's stuff there that it's interesting to talk about how the pendulum has swung, and I've picked up on a few of the things that you've said. Just this idea of tolerance. I just wonder if that's not a reaction to my generation and older being not tolerant, really. I mean, we talked about, we love we love everybody, whatever. But when push came to shove, when it actually meant boots on the ground, when it meant actually doing things, showing our love for people, we were nowhere to be found. And again, broad strokes here, not everybody. Right. And so now we've got a generation of kids who are so morally bankrupt, and it's packaged in this, we're so tolerant and loving, but like you've mentioned, that's not necessarily loving, especially when a person's soul is at risk. Mm-hmm. So, there's this interesting dichotomy that is now created, and you've kind of touched on that. Let me ask you something else. So many churches have been moving to like this more entertainment style worship, hoping that it's going to be bringing in like more people and your generation actually. How much of that is actually resonating with college students as far as like a long-term solution to getting college kids back into church?
I don't view it as a very good long-term solution because there was just this debate last night at the CSC where it was like, well, should we, because it's undoubtable that like people who have the big instrumentation and the big entertainment type stuff, like they get more people. It's true. Mm-hmm. On the college campus, they get more people. But I don't think there's as much like spirituality there. I don't think there's as much depth. They're not getting what they need at the end of the day.
They're getting what they can get on a Friday night at a concert venue or
exactly. They're getting the feel-good feeling without doing any of the work. And so, in a way, it's like almost the worst thing they can get because it appeals to like the number one thing that I think is wrong with the college, them just not caring, them being lazy.
Yeah.
And so that goes into wanting instruments in worship because they want the feel-good feeling, don't want to do the work. Yeah. And so now it's like, it's kind of funny because now it's like you view, like we had the culture, like, the sexual revolution and all that in the 1960s. And they were the real people who were kind of abrasive and who were kind of like rebelling. Well, now who are the rebels? The rebels are the people who are like, no, let's follow Jesus. Let's not party and, get married and have a bunch of kids and, and kind of keep ourselves centered in Christianity. And then, all of that. So like, in a way, I think when you turn to entertainment, you're kind of taking away the greatest benefit that we have as Christians, and that is honestly to preach to people that to give to people what they really need, right? You can't give to people what they really need when they're all, on the entertainment.
And I say that just to, point out, it's not just like instruments. It's just this whole vibe of you're going to a show.
Yeah.
And I've been into some of the churches that's what it is, a show. Mm-hmm. And, there's not a whole lot of room there for, deep connection, meditation, participation in a worship. If you're watching somebody and you're not participating in it, now it truly has become a spectator type situation. And as Christians, I think we're called to not spectate, to participate in.
Yeah, you're not going to get a good Christian by appealing to people who just will show up and they're showing up for the thing and not for what the thing does to them.
Yeah. I read a interesting article, and it was backed by some research from Barna that is finding that this current generation is longing to have a sanctuary type experience with worship, which was really, it's going back to more of a traditional mindset where it's more somber, I guess. It's not what they're getting on Friday and Saturday nights. It's the opposite of that. And it's, they're talking about that authentic worship. And that's an interesting thing to be seeing coming from y'all's generation, that, it's going to the entertainment style venues, but it's very short term, and then they go. And I've talking to some church leaders outside of the more conservative churches of Christ. They're finding that it isn't a long term thing. Mm-hmm. Yes, it brings them in, but they don't stay. They leave, and because they're searching for something deeper. And it seems like you're kind of reiterating that point. All right, last question. I know many college-age students are embracing and supporting, and we've touched on this a little bit, supporting lifestyles and agendas that are in conflict with what Jesus taught. How does a Christian college student such as yourself navigate those relationships with people that are, embracing that, even church people? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Because it kind of reflects like the silent discussion.
Yeah, it does.
Question.
Yeah.
And so I think like it takes understanding someone. Mm-hmm. Like in a meeting with Harrison, I was kind of discussing things that I want to do better. And one of the things that I want to do better, like I want to meet more new people. It's like, well, what do you mean by meeting new people? I'm like, I want to be able to understand things from their perspective. I want to be able to be like, I can see why they think that. I don't agree, but I can see why they think it. And so it takes understanding someone to be able to write, how they're going off, how they're straying. And so what the question was like, what was the question again?
Like, so how do you navigate those relationships with people that have that type of worldview?
Well, it's kind of hard to say because, like, you have to have standards for your relationships, I think. And so, like, if they're just going off and doing whatever, it's like eventually you do have to cut ties. But I think that's the biggest thing is like we said, kind of with like the entertainment is like, well, the thing with like entertainment and like Christian is like it doesn't set the standard of like being a place where you can kind of meditate and learn and really grow deeper. It just kind of gives the, feel good feelings like with entertainment. And so I think that goes even more deeply into personal relationships where it's like people aren't just walking around, like people have souls. And so eventually I do think that what people do kind of catches up with them. Mm-hmm. And it's like it's hard to relate to people, or it's hard to like draw people closer when they don't care. And so it's really about catching them in those moments where they're like, well, wait a second, why am I doing this? Well, wait a second, what's going on with this? And so it's about being the standard, holding yourself to the standard and making sure they're aware of like what standards you have for them with your friendship, for where in those moments where they're like, they don't feel fulfilled, because they'll happen. Yeah. You're going to be the person that they come to.
This has been a enlightening interview. Mm-hmm. On a scale of 1 to 10, how difficult was this for you?
It was more difficult than I was intending. Like I was watching the interview with Jacob, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I would have this to say, and I was this to say." It's harder to do when you're kind of under the mic. Yeah, it's hard to do on the spot.
Bright lights hitting you. Yeah,
like this is the first time that I've ever done anything like this, which has been a lot. This student ambassador, like I've had so many conversations with somebody where it's like, this is the first time where I've ever really had to like try to explain Christianity to a person who doesn't believe. And it's like, it's interesting because when I go back and reflect, I'm like, there's a lot there, but I didn't exactly take it to like the right point. And so, it's definitely, every time I have a conversation where it like makes me think about Christianity and how I'm explaining my ideas and Christianity, it definitely makes me better at like being able to articulate that, I think.
Are you going to watch this podcast with yourself? Are you going to
Probably.
Well, be kind. Be kind on yourself. We have a tendency to pick ourselves apart. I don't watch them anymore. I'm like, why did I say that? Or why did I do this? So, be kind to yourself.
Yeah. And like he's taking a pause. I'm going to,
I used to try to fill in the pauses, but now I do it just to make people feel a little bit more awkward. Yeah, that silent, awkward silence.
I'm well aware, based on conversations with previous essays, that you do enjoy a good bit of awkward silence.
Absolutely, it's one of my favorite things. Yeah. All right. So you know the routine. You're going to close us out with a passage of scripture that resonates with you.
Yeah, it does. Find it. I can't.
So Revelation is at the end of the Bible.
I'm not there yet. We'll get there. We'll start preaching about the end times. Maybe I think that's what we need to do. We need to go out and do street preaching where it's like, get saved now or you're going to hell.
Know.
Jesus is coming. Jesus is coming soon, Craig.
We don't need to do that. Absolutely not.
But no, my one of the verses that resonates with me now is Philippians chapter 27 through the end of the chapter. And it says, "Only let your conduct be worthy of the gospel of Christ, so that whether I come and see you or am absent, I may hear of your affairs, that you stand fast in one spirit, with one mind, striving together for the faith of the gospel, and not in any way terrified by your adversaries, which is to them a proof of perdition, but to you of salvation, and that from God. For to you it has been granted on behalf of Christ, not only to believe in him, but also to suffer for his sake."
That's a good verse. That's not one I normally hear. All right, so wrapping up the show today. Thanks for listening. Give us feedback, like and subscribe. If you would like to email us, right there at the top of the screen is our email, The Line, the Way, and the War @gmail.com. We've got a health professional coming up in a couple weeks, and so submit your mental health questions. We're going to be tackling that. We are on YouTube, so if you'd like to subscribe to our YouTube channel, go ahead and click the subscribe button. And consider being a sponsor of the show. I want to send a special shout out to Ministry League, who is one of our current sponsors. Also, Central Church of Christ, my home congregation here at 400 Vine Street. Please come and worship with us. I think we've got a lot of great stuff going on. Until our next podcast of The Line, the Way, and the War, love one another, be kind to one another, and remember that the creator of the universe loves you so much that he gave his only son up for you. Have a blessed day, everybody. Goodbye.